Hello and welcome in. This is the Victim Paradigm Podcast, where each week it is my privilege to host a part of the Unavoidable reality series, where we attempt to have real conversations and shed light on subjects that most of us would rather avoid or simply ignore completely. My name is Evie Zamora, Certified Women's Life Coach and Women's Program Director for Teshuvah Outreach. I specialize in women's issues stemming from childhood abuse and trauma or violence experienced with an intimate partner, and pretty much everything in between. For those of you that are new to this increasing phenomena, in the early 1900s, it was referred to as wife beating. In the 70s and 80s, it became the battered women's movement, and soon after, called family or domestic violence. Now we call it IPV, an almost happy-sounding euphemism. However, it stands for intimate partner violence. But whatever the acronym or title, the facts remain the same, folks. We don't seem to be getting rid of this problem. In fact, in the last few years, we're seeing it on the rise, to an average of about 1,500 women killed by their intimate partner, boyfriend, or husband right here in the U.S. each year. And for those skeptics that continue to blame the victim for staying, I'd like to remind you that more than half of these women were killed after they left the relationship. I agree to an extent that not ever getting involved with an abusive partner is probably key to not being a part of these statistics. That is why education and advocacy is so vitally important to this problem, so we can live in a world of happy and peaceful times. And for that to happen, we need to have willing hearts to prepare ourselves as well as repair the brokenness we all have. Unfortunately, even though recognizing the problem is the first step, if we don't take the second one, we can't call it walking. If there's no action connected, we're stuck. And that's not a good place to be when trying to achieve healthy relationships. This week, I'd like to begin to address the why of this incredibly complex dilemma in our society. Keep in mind that although my theories I'm about to detail are my own opinions, they are based on facts, statistics, and real-life experiences with lots of people that give me real-life case studies to observe on a daily basis. Now, I'm not talking about my coaching clients. I'm talking about everyday folks, our friends, family, and peers that we talk to all the time. Yesterday, I was able to have coffee with a sweet friend of mine that I haven't had a relaxed chat with in some time. Then, to my surprise, her husband showed up, and then my husband showed up, and it was a party. A rainy morning, sitting with covenanted friends in a cool greenhouse setting, listening to the rain and enjoying inspirational conversation and coffee. It was a really great time. But we touched on a subject that sparked an idea in my head that I'd like to share with you today. Here at Teshuvah Outreach, we don't make it a secret that we believe that there is a certain amount of brokenness in all of us. Not all of the time, but sometimes it's from something perceived by seeing or hearing something during a traumatic event in our lives that we didn't even cause. Here, let me try to paint a picture for you. A child that experiences parents fighting and then divorce, in their mind, the child may think about something they did that upset his parents at some point and will assume responsibility, feeling like he caused the problem that led his parents to divorce. Even more often than not, they believe that they are the problem, and if they went away, their parents would be happy. If parents die suddenly and a child is left to sort out the whys and how comes on their own, and by no fault of theirs, because their parents were gone, out of their lives and never coming back, it sometimes leads to feelings of abandonment throughout the rest of their lives. It's like an unresolved ache that remains sensitive and flares up every time even the thought of doing something that would spur some type of separation on, and it becomes unbearable. These types of feelings, when unaddressed, allow people to continue being involved in situations that may be unhealthy and even abusive. Here's the key to spotting unresolved trauma. Do you know someone that is a strong person, both physically and mentally, that is involved with someone or something that has continually inflicted pain and suffering onto them, but they continue to stay involved with the person or group of people? Sometimes they're just trying to be the bigger person and not just run away. And sometimes they don't believe it's fair to be the one to lose the relationship or the group that they've been involved with within their lives. And they're the ones that have been bullied, threatened, or hurt by untruths and unkind gossip, being separated by the abusers. When someone chooses to keep the good parts of something, knowing that the source is bad, there is a definite problem. It's time to take a good look at the one that's being hurt. My theory revolves around the idea that when watching a dance, for example, a couple that dances together has a certain melding of their bodies. They're in step, in tune, and with each other's movement, there's a certain harmony between them. It's beautiful to watch when it's positive and there's a healthy outcome. In an abuser-victim dance, certain parts of behavior must fit for a couple to continue to dance together. In other words, the abuser has habits, questions, and open spaces that require the victim, in this case, to complete the abuser with cooperating habits, answers that fulfill the questions, and something that fills the void of the abuser. This allows for a fulfillment or completion of each other. Where the idea of cognitive dissonance comes in. Those two words were mentioned briefly yesterday by one of my friends, and it stuck in my mind and took me back to Psychology 101 class in college when I was introduced to the concept. Those two words are profound when recognizing victims of abuse, whether it's school, your congregation, work, or home. And when we examine their weight, we find much merit in the discovery process. Let me try to explain what I mean. When we experience something that is expected for the outcome to be good in our lives, and it results in unpleasant consequences like fear or pain, it produces feelings of dissonance or conflict of feelings, and that produces the question that begs to be answered. We must decide if it was possibly an accident on the other person's or group's side, or were expectations inflated? Were you being overly sensitive or too blue to what happened? Anytime there are repeated behaviors that cause this type of dissonance within us, and when a pattern is established, a conclusion must be made. It is them or it is me. Regardless of the answer, this is the point where a coach or counselor may be effective to help uncover the sometimes hidden reasons behind your thoughts or actions, and also a good place to start to work on a plan to fix those problems and deliberately move on to more healthy relationships. If the answer to the question lies within the other person or group of people causing the deliberate hurt and pain that you continue to feel, go back to the point where it may be effective to see a coach or counselor to work through the process of separating yourself and moving on to healthy relationships. The answer is going to be the same, whether your ideals and expectations are inflated or whether the other person or persons are bullies or abusing you. I'd like to say that again. The answer is always going to be the same, whether it's you or whether it's them. If you decide to stay, you're the one with the problem. Talking about their problem is basically a waste of your valuable recovery time. It would be nice to point it out to them, and they went straight into therapy, shocked and surprised that they didn't recognize it sooner. The only two things I can guarantee is that their brokenness caused it in them, and staying around them won't help. It will only cause more pain and suffering. Whether this is an abusive, intimate relationship, a boss, a pastor, a rabbi that's leading a flock, staying in a relationship where you feel something's, quote, or you see others being treated unfairly or abused, pause and take notice of a pattern. It is a problem, and not just an overreaction or a much-deserved correction. I'm even going to go a step further. While others witness this behavior from the other people, and they don't dig deeper or they choose to ignore the behavior, there's a problem there too. If someone is following a leader and they witness the leader stick their foot out in front of one of the followers and then watch them fall and comment that they should have been more careful, what do? The whole scenario may look innocent or like, oh, it's unclear. Did he do it? Did he not? But if it keeps happening in different ways, and possibly by other leaders in the group, what should be done? I can tell you, my friends, that I am very vigilant to question and find answers of good reason when I suspect abuse. I get to ask. I get to decide. If I believe them, and I get to leave a person, a group of people, or a place that I know and love. I've been there trying to figure out if it walks like a duck and quacks. Is it a real duck that could potentially peck me? Or is it a person in a duck suit trying to be funny but not harmful? If I'm with my child, then I have to decide based on those same feelings if I'm going to hang around or not. Just like in the scenario of the leader and the followers, if you see someone getting pecked by the duck, first identify that it's real. That's easy. Is your friend experiencing pain? And even though it's bleeding, do they continue to brush it off and say, oh, it's not that bad? They explain that they have to gather the eggs to make a salary and getting pecked is just part of the drill. Or the love of the ducks is so big and strong that it's a small price to pay to get to work with ducks. Then one day, it's hot outside and they roll up their sleeves and their arms are covered in scars and there's a missing piece off of a finger that was bitten off by a duck and you can't believe it. Others that work there have had similar experiences and you're horrified by this. And then you learn that the owner of the farm makes everyone take orders from him and that includes working in the duck pen twice a week, whether you like it or not. He knows it's dangerous, but it's not a questionable task, and you will be shamed and humiliated if you refuse and made to feel less than. No matter how good your work and intentions are in other areas of your service. Maybe the owner even singles you out, and the manager talks about you to the other workers behind your back, but you complain and you don't leave. Would anybody believe you anyway? You tell others that you're grateful for the job. The things you've learned about life in general from this man are incredible. He has a large following and everyone seems to be under the spell of him. He's respected and people do what he asks without questioning him for the most part. If you leave, it appears that you were in the wrong. You needed to get your feelings in check And where else would you go anyway? And by the way, most people stay in bad, abusive, or emotionally destructive relationships because they have past experiences that have not been dealt with, and the dissonance they feel is diminished, dispelled, or replaced with good feelings of misplaced gratefulness, group camaraderie, community, or security that they're afraid to lose. And that works for some people. Short term, it works for most. But I can tell you for me, knowing what I know about people that have unresolved problems that they haven't addressed or refused to address on both sides of the fence, whether they're victims or abusers, it will cause problems for them in their lives. And staying because it's easier or less scary or will be lonely are not good enough reasons to stay, whatever the cost. They get to choose what they do, whether they react or plan it on purpose or hurt someone else. They need help. And if you stay knowing the truth, you, my friends, need help too. Let's pray. Father, what is it going to take for us to realize that it's not shameful to admit that we need help to overcome the problems, pressure in life that happens to us? When are we going to be vulnerable to reach out and say, can somebody please help me see the truth and teach me how to fix my side of the problem? And teshuvah, when will we stick it out and weather the storm and face the loneliness and use that time to pray for others that see the house on fire and run back into it because at some point something was said that made them feel good? Open their eyes, Father, to the fact that it was not real. If there was pain and suffering or even dissonance that repeatedly happened or was felt when the person inside said they would make you feel safe, secure, and loved. A true and honest love comes from a heart of vulnerability and trustworthiness, not selfishness and deception. You've taught us that. Help us, Abba, to trust our feelings and not to over-question the wake-up calls that you send us about people and groups of people and leaders that have agendas, unresolved insecurities of their own, and disingenuous integrity and character. Help us understand that everyone is not vain, selfish, and narcissistic, but give us proper ways to sort out the good and the bad. Our lives and our emotional well-being depends on it. We want, Father, so badly to serve you. We want the life that you intended for us. So help us find the right ones that we can trust to help us finish the race strong. We pray and ask all of this in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen. Amen. I'd like to invite you to join in this chat with questions, concerns, and ideas you may have. Please go to our contact page on the website, teshuvahoutreach.com, and drop me an email or send me a text on WhatsApp. I'd love to hear from you. FYI, if you're currently in an abusive relationship or are a survivor of a past abusive relationship, regardless of how many years it's been, we have a special private page just for you. I work with several groups and organizations, and this is a very special support source for you too. Contact me and I'll respond with instructions and the link to get you there. Thanks for being here tonight or whenever you may be listening. Please check the website for upcoming presentations and events. And if the Father so wills, I'll see you next week and we'll pick up right where we left off. Shalom, shalom.